All right, everyone, we start off today talking about the coming recession. It is now a greater than 50% chance over the next half year that we're going to hit true recession conditions. I mean, we're basically, by some metrics, we're already in a recession. The problem is that you can get a death spiraling scenario where the demand of the public for goods, because costs are far outpacing wages. The lower classes already are tuning out the materialism thing. It's beginning, I think, to approach the middle class level. When you get to that point, people buy less. When they buy less, stores make less money. When stores make less money, they potentially have to cut jobs, etc. You end up with unemployment rising along with inflation continuing to rise, especially since it's on up to a 1-year delay. It can continue to steamroll your economy, and you can end up with a situation where you either say, well, we're going to let it take its course, prepare for 2 or 3 years of misery, and then the public, stupid as they are, by the way, punishes you for doing that, even though it's technically the right thing to do, or you institute things like price controls. That is, you blame the corporations for gouging, level off the prices, causing economic havoc. It makes the situation worse, much like it did before when we've tried this. But, you know, the lower classes, they think that you're doing the right thing. Again, because a lot of people are fucking stupid. So either way, you have a shit economy. People saw this coming. I'd be surprised if there was not at least a mild recession. And we don't know how long it'll last, how severe it'll be. We do know, though, that inflation added to the mix of a Great Recession scenario would be a goddamn disaster. It would make the Jimmy Carter era look like it was reasonably economically healthy. We also have foreign diplomacy issues that are resembling the 70s. We have a president, though, now, who, unlike Carter, who was with it, he still is even though he's in his 90s. I wish the Democrats had run him as the candidate. He'd be a better president than Biden, be doing a better job economically too. We have a chief executive who's a steward, who is out to lunch. He does not make his own decisions or even put on his own socks. I think that if a Biden recession comes, it'll be immediately blamed on two things, Trump and Russia. Not necessarily in that order. We'll see. It depends on which line they're going with at the time and how well the Russians' war effort is going. Russia for, energy shenanigans and having its economy destroyed by sanctions after invasion. Again, this won't be reality. It will have added to the damage, certainly in the energy sector especially, but the damage was already done. You had a straight year of unmitigated economic failures in which the same groups that were defending Biden for months and months, well, there's no real inflation, it's just a temporary bump. Well, it's just transitory. Well, it'll peak at the end of 2021. Well, it'll go away by the middle of the second quarter in 2022. None of these things are correct. They circled the wagons for more than a year. They were always wrong. You have low labor force participation on top of this, and you have an energy crisis. One that the White House is addressing by saying, let them eat electric vehicles. It makes no sense. Optically speaking, I'm very worried that we're going to be backed into a corner where they end up attempting price controls. They wreck the economy for a half a generation because they take up this liberal pro-globalist party line as opposed to saying, you know what, maybe the economic problems are due to low energy production, absolutely stupid Fed policies, the fact that nobody has any confidence in investing in the United States because, the president's near 80 years old and has Alzheimer's. Maybe these are bad things. Maybe we were sold a pig in a poke. And by the way, the cat thinks that it's very, very funny to watch me on webcam and has gotten into the habit of grabbing the screen randomly. I'll try to muddle through that, but if she grabs the webcam itself and falls on the floor and you're looking at my ass or something like that, I'll have to do a retake. Anyway, before I continue, keep in mind down below if you're on YouTube, there will be a pinned comment with links to other video hosting sites that I use. Keep in mind I make exclusive content every day on those platforms that doesn't go on YouTube. I try to remind people every day. Sometimes I get too far into a rant, I fucking forget, and I figure if I remember 7 minutes in, I'm like, nah, nobody gives a shit. Fuck it, I'll do it tomorrow. Also, there's a link archived, of course, in the description, cross-platform. An increasing majority of economists are predicting a recession now. So alarm bells should be going off again. I predicted before that there would be shortages and problems with COVID because human beings would have knee-jerk panicked reactions and the more intelligent people would do that same reaction but before everyone else did and just prep because humans are stupid in some cases. Much like with price controls, etc., people will demand them before the end. If there's a recession, if you got stagflationary conditions, they'll demand that you limit price increases. Even though you should be letting the economy correct itself. Painfully, yes, but it'll be quicker and it'll be better long term. We could also try to reduce our reliance on other countries and start producing our own shit for a change. Expanding the middle class, actually making something other than rubber dog poop, not buying everything from fucking China. It's funny. It's a tale of two worlds. Supposedly Europe is overrun by degeneracy and economic socialism and stuff, and yet most of the things that I go to the store and buy, whether it's food, by the way, or not, they're from within Europe, or at least on the outskirts. Very little Chinese products. Unless it's like, bamboo shoots. Okay, probably came from China or maybe Thailand or something. Probably wasn't grown in the Netherlands. It's mostly domestic. Why can't the United States do this? It's one thing the Europeans definitely do better. I don't know how their market system has been set up, but it seems to work more than the one that we've got in the United States. I'm just saying. It's easier to get it from a close neighbor than from across the Pacific Ocean. Not cheaper, but it's easier. It's more efficient, let's face it. I've literally got to move my keyboard onto my leg because the cat has now taken over the entirety of the table in front of the screen. I'm giving you live updates on the cat. You're just as disruptive as Bidenomics sometimes. Sometimes arguably worse. But I think they'll blame Trump as well, and it'll be funny. The Trump derangement crowd will be hip to this idea, and some notorious people that I myself debated on the subject, and I said, look, the current inflation, this is, mid last year, is caused by Biden's initial stimulus, the American Rescue Plan. It fits in with that timeline. 5 or 6 months later, all of a sudden inflation starts rising. The problem is that the Trump economy overall was structurally strong. Biden steadily weakened it day after day with re-regulation, nixing Keystone, although that's a very minor component, admittedly. 10,000 jobs sounds pretty nice, doesn't it? I'm sure those people are very mad about it. The people that would have been employed and gotten good wages. Now I guess they have to flip burgers double shift or something. Biden thinks it's a good thing. He loves the poor, so he wants to make more of them. And anyway, I pointed out that timeline fit in with the rise in inflation. So too, by the way, does the new inflation. Going to start getting that infrastructure deal inflation. The next wave of Biden price hikes will be coming. They'll blame Russia, though. No, the Putin price hikes has already become a new slogan. It's the most optically poor slogan I think that I've seen yet from the Biden administration. Those individuals, though, with Trump derangement syndrome will be notably a bit more quiet and hesitant to take that timeline they initially posited by saying, no. It's actually a year and a half later that the inflation showed up, and it was from Trump's stimulus. His initial wave of lockdowns and subsidizing and trying to keep the economy alive during panic. Well, it'll be interesting because it looks like the recession might hit about that same exact moment in time later. And this time you actually have the inflation and other things that are necessary to say, hey, there's a problem here. And yes, it was cumulative damage and it didn't all happen in the last 6 months. Of course, back when I was doing that debate, that's exactly what you had. So that timeline is accepted. Even though the premise makes no sense. This timeline, because you've got Trump derangement syndrome. He can't have done anything right. It can't be Biden's fault. It has to be Trump's fault because I was told by CNN that he was the devil. All of a sudden, that 18-month timeline now makes total sense. All of a sudden, it doesn't make any sense at all. Oh, it's been exactly the same amount of time since Biden started re-regulating the economy, and now we're in a recession? That's a coincidence. Now, Orange Man bad. 3 years ago, he did something that I disagreed with. There ago, the economy decided to collapse yesterday. I think, unfortunately, there's a better than 50-50 chance of a Biden recession. Again, if you're not a diehard Democrat voter or a member of Biden's family, at this point, I don't think there's any redemption for you intellectually on why you would support this man. And keep in mind, some of the people that are saying that there's an increased degree of chance we're going to hit a recession, a stagflationary recession, by the way, not like the Great Recession. It might not even be as long, but it'll be twice as painful in many sectors. Probably and hopefully not housing. Although right now, if you've seen fucking rent prices, yeah, and that's not limited to just the United States. As goes the U.S., so goes much of the world. You look at a situation where the same people who were circling the wagons have basically abandoned rank. Krugman, number one. He claimed that we'd be in a golden age right now under Biden. He also claimed we'd hit a depression conditions and have World War III under Trump. It shows how screwy Krugman's mind is, but even he's saying, okay, recession is possible. Begrudgingly, he admits it. The Fed is saying, well, no, inflation's not going anywhere anytime soon. Yes, I know. We said that the middle of last year it probably had peaked. We were wrong. We said it'd peak by the end of last year, and we were wrong. We said it'd peak in February, and we were wrong. Now we're saying mid-second quarter. I'm sure that they're not wrong this time, of course. This time, they actually know what they're talking about. They keep kicking this can and hoping that people don't notice their goddamn dysfunction when a group that is in charge of broadly, a giant chunk of the economy and monetary policy consistently gets it wrong under its current leadership. Don't you think that maybe the overall policy is wrong and contributing as a factor to the problems that are happening? If we have a recession, it'll be partially due to Bidenomics. That is his his crazy spending when we should have basically imposed austerity, his promulgation of lockdownerism, which shuttered ports, causing shortages and causing escalating damage, his goofy policy in Russia, his diplomacy there failed. Need I remind people, he was calling Putin and sending Kamala over to East Europe for weeks before the invasion of Ukraine. Apparently, U.S. policy didn't work. Well, that's him. He's chief executive. He's the main diplomat. Kamala's VP. They were the ones involved there. At the 11th hour, they back off and let Macron and then the Germans take the floor. Our policies failed. Biden's diplomacy will have led to the recession even if you directly blame Russia invading Ukraine for it. Even then, it would involve Biden being partially to blame. At least secondarily, he's not the one sending troops into Ukraine, but he's the one that failed in the diplomatic effort to prevent that from happening. But that'll be glossed over. I predict that if a Biden recession does come roaring to the fore, the legacy media, at least at first, will still circle the wagons. They are obsessed with defending Biden's shitty legacy and trying to spit shine a turd because they painted themselves into a corner. I don't even think it's out of any great love for Biden. I think it's because they cast him off as this liberal whiz kid is going to vanquish the evil orange monkey man. And so they painted themselves in a corner. They can't say anything bad about Joe Biden or else they'll think that they're saying something good about Donald Trump. And guess what? They would be, because none of these things happened when Donald Trump was president. I still love it when the Trump derangement syndrome crowd of post-alt-righters mainly continues to whine and harp about how Trump did a bad job. Well, there were more deportations now than under Trump. Yeah, because more people came. Well, it was actually the Trump stimulus that caused this inflation. I bet you won't blame the next spike in inflation and the same timeline on the Biden stimulus, of which there has technically now been two. I'm sure that won't happen. No, Biden is a good guy. No, he's a liberalism for the win, I guess. He's warped, globalistic asshole. That's about all. Peace out.